In my opinion, Royale High is actively failing, and I'm not sure if they're going to be able to continue to compete in the coming years. And so I want to make a video as to why I think Royale High has had a steady decline in their player base over the past couple years. And personally, I can narrow it down to 4 distinct features. Now, keep in mind, this is just my opinion, but it is coming from somebody who played Royale High for several years when I was younger. It was my game that I would come home from school and play that game. Like, I was obsessed with it, okay? And to be fair, I'm not super up to date on the lore of Royale High because it's just not my kind of game anymore. But way back when I was, so just keep that in mind. I used to be a Royale High expert, not so much anymore, but anyways. The first thing I'm going to talk about, which I think a lot of people may agree with, is the greed of Royale High. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're making a really big game, a high quality game, a game with tons of features and customization options and stuff like that, I understand that costs money. I really do. But the issue with me is that it seems like there's always these more so recently, Royale High wanting more money. And so of course there's stuff you can buy in game like currency, diamonds, stuff like that, right? That then you can then trade for items in the game. But they actually introduced a line of items which were available in stores, such as Walmart, where basically you could buy these Royale High figurines and dolls, and in exchange you get a code that you can use in the game to redeem items. Now, I don't really necessarily have an issue so much with games making merch. What I have an issue with is games making merch to artificially skew the value system in their game. And, I'm not an economist, to be fair, but when you have items in a game, example, let's just take a Halo, a generic Halo. I don't know which one I'm going to choose, like the Halloween Halo, spooky one. You have that Halo, right? And then it's worth a certain amount of money. And then you have all these items being introduced to the game that are limited quantity, only sold in specific countries, in specific cities, at specific stores, that people are required to buy. They redeem them for these codes, they can get multiple codes and then get more items, right? Those items are now seen as rarer than an item that you could potentially win at the fountain at the front where you do your daily wishes. They could also potentially be worth more than anything that you could trade for because these items are very limited quantity, right? And value typically depends on how much quantity there is available to the masses. When you have items like this that are blocked not only by region, but by people having money to spend on it, that makes these items artificially inflated. They're seen as worth more. So people who spent years and years trading in Royale High, now their items artificially decrease in value because there's these new items that are rarer that everybody wants. And again, I'm not against a game branding and making merch, but I do think that they know that by introducing these limited edition, hard to get items into the game, that these items are going to be considered higher value, and it just completely ruins the value system in the game and really does make it a sort of pay to win scenario where people can just spend a ton of money buying these toys. And there's also issues with people buying all of the toys from stores. So they go to a Walmart and they would see, oh, there's a bunch of these figurines, and they would buy all of them so nobody else in their area could get these toys, and then they would resell them on applications like eBay for double the price. Just stuff like that I think is very unethical and just not fair. And for me, that was a massive turnoff from this game because I have always been really big into trading, and I would trade for halos and other items and sets and stuff like that. And then learning that all people's effort with trading and, increasing their value was basically just being replaced by people spending money on the game was very disheartening, and it just seemed like a money grab in my opinion. The next thing that we're going to talk about, number 2, is the lack of representation. Now, I'm not trying to sit here and be crazy woke or anything, that's not my intention, but to be fair, when you have a game and you understand that it has a very wide variety of players, to only have a couple POC hairs is a massive disservice. Now, I do understand that I believe last year or the year before that, Royale High got into a bunch of drama because of this, and there's lots of YouTubers posting videos about it, which I did watch a couple of them, but basically, they were talking about how there wasn't enough POC hairs, and then in return, Royale High started doing this weekly initiative, I guess, if I remember correctly, where they would release hairs for different people, different, hair types and stuff like that, into the game, and they'd release more mask hairs and feminine presenting hairs, right? Now, my issue with this is that it should have never been a problem to begin with. That's what I think. I think it should have never had to have been this big explosion of, hey guys, we need this representation, what's going on, and for this whole cancel culture kind of environment to ensue. As a game that is worth a lot of money and that has a lot of players, I think it's unreasonable to not add more representation to your game just out of the kindness of your heart. Why do people have to get upset with you for you to do it? I just think that's ridiculous, and it just doesn't make Royale High look like a game that is for the players, right? And I'm not going to necessarily get too much into other games because other games have their own controversies and stuff like that, but an example of a game that has, visibility for other groups just right off the bat is a game called Monsterverse, which is actually coming out, I believe, this fall. The release date has been pushed back a couple times, but I've been looking into it because it sounds very interesting. And right off the bat, they have different body types, they have different size bodies, they have different hair types. They're implementing different cultures into their game and trying to be understanding of different cultures and perspectives. And not to mention, they literally have ramps. It's like a school, I guess, like a monster school, and they have ramps in the school. And I know people might not see that as being important, like who cares, like it's a Roblox character. But, you know, for a kid that maybe is physically disabled and has to use a wheelchair or can't use stairs, like, honestly, in my head, like seeing something that represents, you know, it's like mindful that you exist and that you are a person in this community would be really nice to see. And I just think for a game to right off the bat be taking their time and pushing the release date back just to ensure that they have all these things perfect, I think is a very good thing. And it's unfortunate that Royale High couldn't do that without the community having to have a massive argument about it. It should have just been done from the get-go. People shouldn't have had to beg for different body types, which I still don't think Royale High is a very good body type representation, but that's another thing. But they shouldn't have to beg for hairs that represent their natural hair type. Obviously, you don't need thousands and thousands of hairs, but when you only have mainly straight hair types that are primarily belonging to people who are not people of color, I think that's doing a great disservice to the community because the people who are playing your game are not solely white people. There are people from various backgrounds, people who are mixed, you know. Just recognizing that there's a variety of people that play your game is very important, and you shouldn't just cater to one demographic. I think that's unfair. Now, the next thing was slow updates. Royale High, I understand, has a lot of stuff to their game. There's a lot of details, and it's going to be hard to update the game, especially if you want to add stuff and make it high quality. But my issue, personally, was that the idea of a new school was teased for like years. It was a constant thing, and me being a naive kid was like, oh my god, I'm so excited for this new school, like I'm so excited, it's coming out today, it's coming out tomorrow. And on top of that, you had YouTubers and community managers that would post videos, right? Saying like, guys, the release date has just been announced, and then it would be clickbait. And all these creators were using clickbait to kind of like false start Royale High's, you know, like updates and stuff like that, which is very unfair to the player base. And the fact that these updates just took so long, and there was always excuses as to why they're taking so long. And I get that maybe once or twice you'd have some delays and stuff like that, but it felt like to me, as a kid at the time, that every single update was like a battle to get. It was like, oh, it's coming, oh, it's not, oh, it's coming, oh, it's not, oh, it's coming, but it's like severely glitched. Or like they'd rush an update and it would just not work, or stuff would be broken. Or I remember one day, it was like, I was like really young, but there was like an update in the game, and I had diamonds. It wasn't like an astronomical amount, it was like 300,000 or something. And I joined the game after a massive update, as they called it, and all my diamonds were gone. And I had to submit a support ticket, and I never had it resolved. It was never fixed. And it was just like, I understand, like in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. But to me, and especially as being a kid who played this game, like if I had spent money on those diamonds, I would be fuming, right? And it feels like they would rush updates or just like kind of hint when they'd be out, and they wouldn't set realistic timelines for themselves. And so we would always get an incompleted update, or just something that, you know, just it was delayed so much that your anticipation for the update had just vanished. Like it was like, oh, okay, great, it's finally here. It's been 3 years. That's nice. You know what I mean? Like the update schedule was just not consistent, and it just wasn't up to par with what other games are doing. Now, the final reason that I think Royale High has, and probably the biggest reason as to why they've seen such a significant decline in their player base, is because of most of the influencers leaving. Don't get me wrong, there are still lots of people who play Royale High, lots of creators who play Royale High, but the issue is those creators, for the most part, like the OG creators, either got their badges taken away or left the game because of all the controversy surrounding the old community manager, the lack of representation for minority groups, and just, you know, people feeling like the game wasn't on the right track. And so that led a lot of influencers to leaving the game. Now, I think people oftentimes take the power of an influencer for granted because influencers have a lot of power in this media landscape, right? And they have the power to make or break your game. And I'm not saying that I promote cancel culture, but I think that's what this is. It's a form of cancel culture. It's not necessarily super evident, but the fact that these influencers have left, and it's almost like a mass migration away from Royale High because of all the issues they've seen with the game, Royale High no longer has endless free advertisement, and that's what this game is getting. And that's a whole other video I'll make about like Royale High and other games, but I don't understand games' resistance to rewarding content creators on their game. Like, I don't get it. Because you know how much money it costs to run Google ads or advertisements on social media? And you have these influencers with millions of subscribers, hundreds of thousands of views on all their videos, who are promoting your game for free, who are hyping up the updates, who are playing the game and Personally, like when I was younger, I would watch people like Leah Ash and watch her play Royale High and other games, right? And watching her play those games encouraged me to play those games. And so that's how I found like a lot of the games that I played. And when I kind of would have like seasons where I was like, oh, I'm kind of bored of this game, and she would play an update in the game, or she would like do a challenge in the game, it would inspire me to play the game as well. It's like, it really is just a process of influencing people's decisions, and that's what she would do, right? And that in turn made Royale High a lot of money because I spent so much time in that game. I would beg my parents for Robux like any kid would, and I would spend all of my Robux in Royale High. So Leah Ash indirectly led me to spending hundreds of dollars on Royale High, which is so funny. But that's what these games take for granted. They're always so like resistant to giving people badges, which I understand you want them to be exclusive. But you know, if someone's brought in so much traction to your game, I don't think it's unfair to give them a badge or to recognize them or to say thank you or just like a small thing, right? To recognize that these people are helping you. Because advertising is so expensive, it's very costly, and the issue with advertising is you have to like plan the campaign. You have to make the ads, you have to decide how you're publishing them, which groups you're targeting, what platforms you're targeting, when to send them out. There's all these logistics to it when you could literally just have your game and have some person put all their time and effort into making a video about your game and in turn give you tons of traffic for free. Not to mention, a lot of these influencers would spend money in the game to show people like new features and stuff like that. So it's just insane to me that this game hasn't really prioritized keeping relationships with their influencers, in my opinion. And you know, after a lot of the influencers left with the drama this past couple years, right? And they played other games like Dress to Impress and stuff like that, who have more inclusivity, which I still feel like Dress to Impress has some issues with their body styles and whatever, but a lot of these influencers have left Royale High to play other games, such as Dress to Impress and It Girl, because those games have more consistent updates. They have a stronger player base. It seems like to a degree, which I'll talk about in another video, they do listen to their player base, whereas Royale High has almost been on this like pedestal of being such a large game on Roblox for such a long time that in my opinion, they almost got the impression that they could stop trying. It's like, oh, well, we're already a mega game on Roblox, so do we really need to listen to people? Probably not. Like, it's fine. Like, they'll take this update and they'll be fine with it. But I think they're now realizing that that doesn't cut it anymore because there's so much competition. Influencers only have a certain amount of time they can spend editing videos and making content. And at the end of the day, if your game doesn't have a lot of players in it, influencers can't join the game and get content because there's nobody to play with, nobody to make videos with, right? And in turn, they don't release those videos, and so nobody sees the videos like I did, and nobody plays the game. And so people are just continuously aging out of Royale High and not finding the game again, right? So anyways, that was a long rant on my part, but I just think it's so interesting that games like, example, Dress to Impress, which Dress to Impress has its own issues, don't get me wrong, but here I'll actually say this. It Girl, which a lot of people say is similar to Dress to Impress, but I do think it has lots of differences, right? I was seeing stuff on Twitter and actually TikTok this morning when I was scrolling before I recorded this of several different influencers being like, hey guys, look, I got this influencer badge in It Girl. And that kind of is what reminded me that It Girl existed, because it's like, wow, like they're recognizing that these people are helping their game and they're rewarding them by giving them recognition, which a lot of influencers, especially people who make kids content, don't necessarily want to be paid for their influencing, which I don't necessarily think is right. I think everybody should be compensated for what they do. But a lot of people who make content for games or make content around games just want to be recognized. They just want to be appreciated, right? And so just doing the little step, the tiny, tiny task of giving them an in-game UI is typically enough to make them feel like, wow, like I'm making a difference, I'm being recognized, and it makes them want to promote your game more, which I really wish Royale High would just acknowledge. Like, it doesn't mean you treat anybody differently. I'm not saying like, oh, favoritism towards influences or anything like that, but just, you know, being conscious and recognizing the effort people are putting into helping you grow your game. Because I feel like that's been something that has been very overlooked by Royale High the past couple years, and that they just really took the influencers and their community, in my opinion, for granted. And now they aren't in the game anymore. The game is seeing the real impacts of influencers not constantly giving them free promotion. But anyways, that's just my opinion on why Royale High is, in my opinion, again, failing. 1, due to the greed, 2, due to lack of representation with minority communities, 3, with the slow updates and just not accommodating to the changing player base, and 4, with all the influencers for the most part leaving or transitioning or in the process of transitioning to other games because they aren't being recognized for their efforts by Royale High. So anyways, that's what I had to say in this video. I do plan on actually doing a deep dive into the historical background of Royale High and like just timelines and stuff like that, and maybe comparing how many influencers specialize in Royale High content now versus in the past, because I think that'd be very interesting. But let me know in the comment section if you guys would be interested in that. And thank you guys for watching. I did put out a community tab post saying I'm working on a Discord server. That is accurate. It's not up yet, so don't be joining anything thinking it's me, but I will be making a Discord server for you guys to give me video suggestions, and I'm trying to do a ticket system to make it so you guys can send like evidence or images or stuff like in your ticket so I can include it in the video. But I just think that'd be interesting because I get lots of questions regarding me making certain videos, but then I can't find the information the person is referencing in the comment. So anyways, keep an ear out for that because that will be coming out later this week. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye!